So, like we've been doing the last several weeks, and we'll do for a few more yet, we're looking into the nervous system and how does that actually work in our body. One of the inspirations for this several week exploration is Deb Dana and her work on the polyvagal system. We'll continue to work with her book, Anchored, and her nervous system course from Sounds True, which are both wonderful, and how she describes the science of feeling safe enough to fall in love with life and take the risks of living. And in particular, right now, there's a lot of extra pressure on us with COVID and all of the things that happen normally in life, as well as those things that are happening that are particularly related to that. So, these pathways of connection are ideally formed through co regulation in childhood. And more often, or at least as well as these pathways of protection, are also happening. So, this is a neural networks, the neurobiology, the nervous system. There's a lot of research done now on how all of that works. So, cues of safety deepen our feeling of connection and bring us to that home state of trust and safety, the ventral vagal. Cues of danger, of course, pull us out of that. We don't feel as settled in our life. And we might go into a fight or flight or more of a dorsal freeze. What I experience with that in my life is that I'm fairly well regulated, but when I start to notice kind of irritation in my mind, irritability with people that normally wouldn't bother me, or when I'm driving and somebody slow pulls out in front of me, normally I can just kind of let that flow through. And when I'm feeling a little bit less well regulated, then those things bother me more, or I'll notice that my shoulders are up around my ears, or I'm not breathing as fully as I sometimes do. So this is one of the ways that we can really track this mindfulness of what's happening in our own system. So when we know what's happening on a regular basis, then we can track the changes. And that's actually how our primitive brain works. So I noticed when I used to live in the country south of Calgary in Alberta, and there were bears and moose and all kinds of things. The rancher just beside us, I had a small place, but the rancher beside us had like 30 acres of land, or 30 sections of land, sorry, 30 sections. So it was like this huge, it was like a park. And normally when I would look out the window, I wouldn't really see anything. But once in a while, when I'd look out the window, I would notice something was different, and I wouldn't notice what it was exactly. But if I stood there for a while and watched, there would often be some kind of a movement. So there was a moose feeding over there, or there was a bear or something. And so that's how the primitive brain tracks things. It's always looking. And then when something different happens, that's when it becomes alert to it. So, of all the thousands of sense perceptions that roll through our brain, through hearing and sight, it only really pays attention to the ones that feel dangerous. So if we are living in a state of more protection, which certainly children are, if they're not well included and protected in their family, then we have those circuits for protection, those pathways get stronger and stronger. So that's how our nervous system takes these cues, it builds these pathways. And if we've had a lot of feeling a threat or not being safe in a certain situation, we're much more likely to react more strongly because that's what our history tells us. And then in addition to that, we have kind of a preferred go to. So some people go more into flight, some into fight, and some go into more of a dorsal shutdown, this freeze or disconnection. So, just as a quick kind of reminder, this is our autonomic nervous system. When we are at home, we feel well regulated and connected and safe. We're curious, we're open, we're willing to engage with other people. And it's normal for us to move up and down the ladder all the time. We're always stimulated into this or that. And one of the things that we do in these groups together is that when I'm sharing some of this might kind of trigger a response or activate a response in you. And then you can see that, oh, I don't like what she just said there. Or when other people are sharing, when we get to that part of this community class, sometimes when people share something, we have an outpouring of sympathy. Our hearts just soften. And other times they irritate us what they're saying. And so it's such a practice for us to go inside and go, what is it about this that I'm reacting to? And it's not really about the other person, although they give us the opportunity to have a look at that. And sometimes, it's something that we don't want to be around, or sometimes there's an impatience for something because we've had our last straw with similar behavior somewhere else or similar thinking. Sometimes it's something that it's a shadow we don't want to see in ourselves. So that's one of the ways that we work with the nervous system, and then to come back home. So we can't really come back into regulation if we don't know that we've gone out of regulation. And then once we do, we have all of these reliable ways to do that. So let's take a minute here. Can you have compassion for yourself right now? So, all these years, we've been blaming ourselves for our fight response and getting in trouble with other people. We might be blaming ourselves for having a dorsal freeze. Well, I should have fought back. I should have said this thing. What's the matter with me that I couldn't do that? So, we kind of turn on ourselves. So, just to take a moment, this is our mammal body nervous system. It's unconscious. Until we start really being mindful of it, we don't really know what's going on. We're not really taught about this in school or earlier in our life. This is fairly new that it's come into more widespread recognition. And so, this turning against ourselves and blaming ourselves for our nervous system perception and response is very common. And it's really something that we could let go of. Let's just sit with that. What does that feel like? Does that feel like a possibility to open into that? So let's do an inquiry. So, home meaning ventral vagal. Where is home? The ventral vagal, the state of trust and connection, the top of that ladder. And where is your home away from home? That would be your most likely go to. Do you normally disconnect and go into freeze? Do you just get out of there? Do you have a fight response? And one of the nuances of working with this is that we can keep a foot in home in ventral vagal, even as we're seeing, oh, okay, I'm being really triggered into a fight response here. Let me attend to that. I understand what's going on. Let me stay regulated as I really explore that. Where do you most often like end up? So what's your preferred or your go-to? And we're going to work with some specific examples. So it could be something recent. Don't work with a 10 out of 10 necessarily in something in a class like this where you don't have the time to really go into it. But we're just working with it as an illustration. What are some examples when you felt like you were pulled out of your safe zone and into a pattern of protection? Notice what your body feels like as you're bringing that to mind. So stay regulated through your breath. Stay aware that you're in a safe location. You can look around, let your eyes take that in. And most of us have a pretty good sense of what our go to is. So now, if you were to look back, and we'll link the childhood protection circuits, and then we'll come in on the next slide to our adult situations. All of us bring our childhood protection circuits forward into our adult life. It's just the way it always works. Even though it might not be as strong or intense or as debilitating now, we can usually find a through line from our childhood. So if you were a child who, we'll use the freeze response just as an example, but if you more do flight or fight, use that. If you didn't go into that mode when this specific thing happened, what would have happened? So if you didn't go into a flight mode, for instance, when your parents raised their voices, if instead you went into a fight mode, what would have happened? Would you have been protected? And the dorsal, the disconnect is more when you were 7 years old, for instance, and there was a sound of a crash in the living room and loud voices. If you let yourself really feel that at that time, would that have been something that you could have handled? So going into a feeling of disconnection might have been absolutely the best thing that you could have done. So you were under the protection of our home away from home. And if anything's getting really activated, do some tapping on your forehead. Take your attention into the sound of that and the sensation of that on your forehead. Do some deep breathing, long exhales. Stay regulated as you're looking at this. We're looking at memories. Keep your eyes open. Stay aware that you're here. And use a few examples. If you had a mean teacher, if you would have spoken up and said, "You're mean," what would have happened? Or maybe something good happened from that. Just to look at what actually happened. What did you learn? What does your experience tell you is the best thing to do? And just not to go too deeply into any one memory, think of a few different ones. When you were under the protection of your usual defense strategy, and maybe it was fawning, maybe it was, I tried to be really, really good so that nobody would hurt me, so that they would love me and include me, and maybe even so that my mom would be happy because she was depressed or something. So look at the ways that our strategies, unconscious strategies, have protected us at that time. So part of what we're eliciting here is our judgment and shaming of ourselves for different things. So if we felt like we were in freeze, oftentimes we feel like, well, I should have been able to fight back. But the freeze response was probably very protective. And it might have been your best chance. Usually, children have very good neuroception. We have a sense, a strong sense of what's the best thing to do, the thing that will keep us alive and let us survive is the best thing. And now we're adults, we made it through. Let's look at the next section now. So, if you think about now that you're an adult and you're under the protection of that same fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and think of a couple of examples. And as you're looking at those examples, notice your body, your breath, stay grounded. These circuits are here for our protection. And we're just taking a clear eyed look at, well, what if I didn't do that? And part of this is, well, I have other options now. I could have done this instead, or I can really see how going into a fight response in that situation wasn't serving me. So now, as an adult, we have a different set of resources: emotional, social, financial. So we're looking to see It's kind of, how does this work now that we're an adult under the protection of our survival strategies? There's so much more nuance here. If I let myself connect with how I feel when someone speaks to me with scorn, then I'll experience that, and maybe I would have left that relationship earlier. So even as you're remembering and maybe being activated, keep a foot in ventral vagal. Keep one foot in your home base of safety, connection, kindness for yourself. And then coming into this, just this tracing, the obvious and the subtle, and probably some of this is already coming up for you. So, how did these patterns move through from childhood into adulthood? How did they benefit you then? And then there's sitting with this question of, is it really necessary and helpful now? And these might be really obvious on a conscious mind level, but that's not where these systems reside. They're unconscious, they're in our nervous system. So notice how you feel in your body as you're looking at this. And some of these might be very calm when you're with certain people and very activated when you're with other people. Certainly, they're made more intense with the general level of stress right now with COVID or with whatever it is that's going on in your life. If you're having a relative period of ease, then it's going to be different than if you're having a relative period of stress. And in a moment, we're going to pause this and share with each other. But before we do, just to kind of review what's happened in the last 15 minutes of this, what are the main themes? What did you notice as a child? What did you notice as an adult? What works well for you? What doesn't? Do you feel compassion and connection with yourself? Are you shaming yourself? What is kind of alive in this for you right now? And if you want to move around, move your body, do some shaking, hold your hands, take some long breaths. This is a good time to do that. And then exhale. Maybe let out a couple of gusty sighs. Breathe in deeply. Move your body around a bit. One of the things we know about the primitive brain and the negativity bias of the primitive brain is that it always takes precedent. And that's largely what drives our nervous system. It's largely what drives the thoughts in our mind. Not all the thoughts in our mind, but a large portion of the thoughts in our mind are driven by the nervous system. Am I safe? Am I not safe? Oh, this reminds me of that. What about this? We have images come in, we have all of these associations. So keeping part of ourselves in regulation can really help because we remember that we're not back in the memories that are coming forward. And we can more easily bring ourselves back to a state of regulation if we are already partway there. So the reflection here and the question I want to sit with for a minute is my nervous system on my own side? So if you were talking to or connecting with your nervous system, saying, are you on my side? Are you on my side? And notice what comes up. all the fight, flight, freeze, fawning, is that for your benefit? One of the things that we see when we ask that question of an energy in our body, for instance, if we have something painful, like I feel my chest is heavy and I can't hardly breathe, or something is, stirring, or I've got a clench in my gut or something, is that when we look and we connect with that energy and we ask, is this here to hurt me? It 100% of the time, no, it's here to protect me. It's here to let me know something. It's here to help me bring something forward, to release it, to heal it. I wanted to do just a little practice here. One of the questions is that we could ask of our nervous system, what is it that you need before you know that it's safe to release or to let go of these old patterns? So we'll come to that kind of part way through, but in the beginning, just to really offer our nervous system some respect, some affirmation, some validation. I really appreciate my nervous system. It's been really helpful. It's helped me make it through till now. I love you and thank you for your service. You could have your hand on your heart or just kind of tuning in to your being, which includes this physical body and our nervous system, our strategies. It includes our home, our ventral vagal, safe and connected. It includes all of our reactivity, our whole history with that. And in kind of a nonverbal way to cultivate that appreciation. My nervous system is really doing its best to keep me safe. And to sense into the question of, what do I need on a nervous system level? What do I need to feel safe? To not go so deeply into my fight, flight, or freeze. To feel that urge to fawn or comply, but instead to stay stable and regulated. What would I need before that would feel more possible? And then let's move into this practice. This is again from Deb Dana's book, Anchored. So the question is, where has our biology taken us and what will bring us home? And one of the exercises, and she's brilliant with these exercises that she suggests in this and her other books, add the word yet to the end of a sentence. So if you were looking at, kind of bring to mind some of the things you were working with before, you could do that with that, or just something fresh. What is it that bothers you? And it could be something internally to you, like I can't look at this person without judging them yet. Or if you're frustrated with someone who's just not able to really connect, maybe they're in freeze, maybe they're all over the place. I can see they want connection with me, but they can't settle enough to be present yet. I don't feel open hearted about this yet. Let's take about 3 minutes just to see what comes up around this and what does it feel like to make a statement and then add yet to the end of it. If you wanted to write them down, you could, or just keep them in your mental kind of area, your mind's eye. What are the sentences? What does it feel like in your body when you say that sentence? I don't feel open hearted about this. And bring to mind the specific incident or person. And then say it again with the word yet at the end of it. It could just be a simple statement of fact. I can't stop feeling angry about that yet. And try not to go off into the kind of the next layer of thought around it. Well, of course you should be angry. They did blah, blah, blah. Try not to get into that. Just keep coming back into the sentence. I can't stop feeling angry at them yet. And then finish that up